So is there technology, technology exists so you would know that one was received before the other one? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how there would be technology to know when one came and that the other one wouldn't be counted, you know.
Yes, thank you for your question.
It seems a bit confusing to me.
So we have two systems that collect that data, and the local boards of elections get reports from those systems that show for each voter that has more than one voting credit, it produces a report with those voters listed so that the local boards do know that I voted and returned my mail-in ballot, and I also went and I voted a provisional ballot. So there's one database that's used, and the reports are generated from that database. So they do know who has submitted 2 ballots.
Thank you very much.
Nikki, could you walk us through that process for what it looks like on election day itself? So say I've requested a mail-in ballot and maybe I haven't yet received it or something, but I'm nervous. I'm going to go to my polling place on election day to ensure that I vote. When I check in, what happens in the system?
Sure. So if you've requested a mail-in ballot, then the electronic poll books, which are the tablet-like devices that our poll workers use to check you in, that your record will show that you've already voted or you've already been sent a mail-in ballot. And if you then show up and vote, then the election judge is going to say, we've marked you as already voting or having received a ballot. So you can vote today, but you have to vote a provisional ballot. And the reason for that is just to make sure that there's only one ballot that's counted. And so you'll vote the provisional ballot. It will go in a locked bag that when it gets back to the office will be processed. And at that point, then the local boards will be looking for a mail-in ballot from you. And if they receive it, then it'll show up on that report. And then in the reg that we just talked about, control number 22-342, your mail-in ballot would be received. But if you never returned your mail-in ballot, maybe you, as in your example, you never received it in the mail, or you just decided you wanted to vote in person. If you never return that mail-in ballot, then your provisional ballot will be the only ballot that's counted. There's not another one to count. And that happens. And as we're transitioning more to mail-in, people are still figuring out how that works. But we'll count one ballot and only one ballot.
Thank you. Senator Hershey, would you mind putting yourself on mute? Thank you. So Nikki, just to clarify, everybody who's both received their mail-in ballot and has requested a mail-in ballot, if they choose to go and vote in person, they will be only able to vote provisionally.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Senator Carter. Senator Carter, you have your hand up, but we can't hear you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I apologize for not being on camera. I had a question. So in my district, in my district and the city overall, and probably across the state, there were a number of problems with voting in the primary. One of the most glaring issues was that in particular neighborhoods, because of redistricting, people were sent ballots, mail-in ballots that were the wrong district. And then there was not enough time for them to get the correct ballot. And so they were told to go to the right place to vote and on election day. But then there were a number of people that had requested the mail-in ballots because of the fact that they were disabled or unable to make it to the polls. And so I wanted to know what, if anything, has been done since the primary to make sure that those redistricting problems that came about have been corrected.
I can, excuse me, I can take that one. This is Melissa Dorsey for the State Board. We have just actually wrapped up our final audit, I'm very happy to say, on the city redistricting, and have worked with an outside vendor to make sure that all of the lines that caused issues leading up to the primary have been fixed and all of the voters are in the right district. So it should not be an issue. We sent out our first round of ballots to them. And they were all sent to the right voters and the audit checked out well. So very happy to announce that.
Could I ask that you send that audit to committee staff to then send to all the members of the committee?
We don't have a written report right now. We work through a map that I would imagine is shareable. Just let me work with the vendor on a way to get that to you.
Thank you, because people, I know the example, obviously, that Senator Carter talked about, because we're the same district, that people were hearing go one place, then it was corrected, then it was uncorrected. So it will be very reassuring to know that it has been corrected.
Sure.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I'm gonna,
Delegate McConnell. McComas, excuse me, I promoted you to minority leader. Delegate McComas, you are muted.
Unmute, okay.
You're
Real
not.
quick question, and I apologize for the late question, but where are the ballots coming from, the absentee ballots or even the printed ballots? Because I understand they were coming from out of state. And I'm getting different replies from different constituents that they've received their ballot. No, they haven't received their ballot. And I was just kind of curious who the vendor is.
Thank you for the question. So we use two different vendors to produce our ballots. We use a printing company in Pennsylvania, sort of southeastern Pennsylvania, to print all of the ballots for in-person voting. We use a mail house in Minnesota, company called Taylor Communications, to produce the mail-in ballot packets. So they are being mailed from Minnesota, and we are carefully tracking the USPS data for those mailings. They're taking about 3.5 days from when it's mailed in Minnesota to arrive in mailboxes in Maryland. So it's the post office is doing a tremendous job of moving our mail for us. And but they are being mailed from Minnesota, and the other printer is in Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, when should our constituents be receiving their ballots?
So that will depend on when they asked for them. So if they asked for them before the middle of September, then their ballot packet's already in the mail and they should have received them. Those were all mailed. They finished up mailing at the early part of last week. If they just asked for, let's say I asked for one today, we are sending those data files to the vendor twice a week. They're mailing twice a week. So probably about a week or so from when I submit my request to be able to start looking for my ballot. We are, as we started doing in the 2020 election, we do send out for voters that we have email addresses for, emails saying that your ballot is on its way so they can know to start looking for it. We send out an email saying that your application's been processed. So that's the first check. And then your ballot's on the way. So it just really depends on when they ask for it. But it's about a week or so now submitting a request to getting your ballot in the mail.
Thank you.
and the members of AELR recall the baptism by fire we had in 2020 when we shifted very abruptly. And I'm glad to hear that the US Postal Service is doing a much better job at moving those mail-in ballots than they did 2 years ago. That's quite a relief.
Delegate McComas.
Just a quick follow-up. So when we get the number of folks that have requested absentee like once a week, and I guess what I was from our Board of Elections, and I was just wondering what the lag time is between the state getting the information and then sending it on to the vendors for the ballots versus when we receive it from our elections, that these folks have requested absentee, either computer or hard copy.
So we are pulling from the same database as your local board is. So it really depends on just the cycle of when you're getting your lists and when we're sending them out. But they're entering the applications in the same system that we are grabbing the data from. So there isn't a lag in terms of them entering it and us grabbing it. It's just a timing question of when we pull it and when you get yours.
Administrator Lamone, I'd like to move from the mailing of mail-in ballots to the canvassing of mail-in ballots that has been in the news quite a bit. It is my understanding that while the Court of Appeals allows for local boards to begin canvassing before the November 10th date, there are a number of local boards who have made the determination to not canvass before November 10th, which has the potential to create a little bit of chaos across the state. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please, and the status of various counties?
Yes, thank you for the question. We got the Court of Appeals ruling on Friday afternoon. Yesterday was a holiday, although a lot of us worked anyway, but getting other stuff done. So we met this afternoon, my staff, to start discussing this issue because as I'm sure you feel, I don't want to have counties doing things differently on different days. It just doesn't seem fair to the candidates and to the voters to have that happen. So I've asked the staff to come up with a plan of how we could accommodate the most of the issues that the counties have. Some of them don't have a lot of space or staff to do a lot of canvassing continuously. So what we need to do is figure out who can do what and when, and then try to find a convenient schedule for everyone to follow.
And the follow-up to that is, does the state board have the authority to tell local boards to canvass early?
I think clearly they do.
Okay.
And if there's some indication that some people aren't going to follow it, we can always adopt an emergency regulation.
Okay, that was my
Right.
next question. Okay, you beat me to it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Senator Kagan, who's our special guest today, former chair of AELR and vice chair of EHE. Senator Kagan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for letting me horn in here. Your question was so important, Senator Elfreth, and I was a little surprised and confused by Ms. Lamone's answer, because the legislation and the court ruling, I thought, was about authorizing the 24 local boards of elections to canvass early if they wanted, number one, two, if they thought there was a need, and three, if they had the capacity. I know that even in Montgomery County, which has an enormous number of mail-in ballots, they're only talking about 2 days a week. And that's because of the ability to get staff and to rent sufficient space for transparency and social distance and all that. So just could you say more about emergency regs that would mandate that, like Anne Arundel County, for instance, has said we don't want to canvass early for whatever reason? And I'd love to hear more about that. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
Well, we're trying to figure out, we have a lot of moving parts here that we have to deal with. One of which is the audit of the voting of the ballots that's done by Clear Ballot after Election Day, and the logistics of having everything done at the same time and getting them the files at the same time. And as I said, we are just starting to planning that and trying to figure out the best way for the counties to accommodate some sort of uniformity in the reporting of results. I do not want one county reporting mail-in ballot results on election night and it's another county not. I just think that that would be chaotic not to have everybody results from mail-in ballot reported at the same time. Otherwise, you'd have some of them reporting them on election night, perhaps, and others reporting them on perhaps the following weekend or the beginning of the following week. And that seems to me not to be very well organized to do that. So, as I said, I've asked the staff to look at a plan and talk to the counties and try to figure out the best way to accommodate whatever everybody needs. And you're right, some of them don't have the staff, some of them don't have the facilities to do a large scale. And so we're going to be looking at all that.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Can I assume that will be or have, obviously the decision didn't come down till late Friday, consulting with the Attorney General's office as to your authority to require that all jurisdictions count early?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
And considering we now have 28 days, as Chair Rosenberg said, I hope that we can all stay very close in touch in case we do have to, this committee is going to have an emergency regulation before us.
Absolutely.
Well, seeing no other hands. Oh, spoke too soon.
Delegate McComas, I feel like I'm in a Judiciary Committee hearing. Delegate McComas. You're muted. Delegate McComas. Okay.
A quick question. All right, we had and I know you probably are going to feel like you're back in judiciary, Delegate Rosenberg, but we had the leak from the Supreme Court regarding the abortion, and we've heard no more about it. But to my mind, I think that was a real violation of the court. So my concern is it possible we could have a leak from the early voting counting and that comes out? And that's a concern because I assume it's not illegal because there's no law against it. And so that's what I'm really concerned about. And that's why I'm kind of very concerned about the early voting of, not the early voting, but the early counting of these ballots. So, you know, and then announcing them whenever the full votes are in. So that's a concern. And if anyone can address that, I'd appreciate it.
Now, Nikki, can you give her, the delegate, the process on that, please?
Yes. So for the local boards counting before Election Day, so this is the counting of mail-in ballots before Election Day. Anybody present in that room has to sign a confidentiality agreement, and anybody observing or counting has to sign that confidentiality agreement. And then as the results are printed off, there's an even smaller group that has access to that. And those just get locked up in the local board office in a secure location. Sometimes it's the election director's desk, it's a safe, but it's in a very controlled space. The same process happens Election Day with the printing of results from early voting. Again, it's considered open, but anybody who's present signs a confidentiality agreement to be present. And if they won't sign it, they need to leave because we want to certainly protect the results that are printed before the polls close. So this was a process. We've had the process in place for early voting since we started early voting in 2010. And then we just replicated and expanded that process in 2020 when the local boards counted before Election Day. And so that's the process that we found to work and will put in place or have already put in place for any local board that's going to count ballots before Election Day.
Is there any consequence, civil or criminal, for violating that confidentiality agreement?
There might be some criminal penalties that would be applicable. You're intending to interfere with an election, and there are criminal penalties for that. I don't know exactly what they are, but there's a general provision in the election law article. There might be others under other criminal statutes too.
And Nikki, as a follow-up to that, we've been engaged in early voting for over a decade now, or close to. And have we ever experienced a confidentiality leak when it came to the results of early voting or during the 2020 election during early canvassing of those ballots?
Right, we haven't. The local boards do a very good job of keeping that information as tight as they have to, and then preserving them until after the polls close.
Thank you.
Philip McComas, you're not muted. Oh, now you are again.
Okay. Oh dear. All right.
You're muted again.
Real quick question. Could you just consult with your AG to make sure that if somebody did do that, I mean, this is the parade of horribles that judiciary deals with, that they would be prosecuted. I'm just concerned that things are pretty heightened right now, and everybody's worried about election integrity. And that's just my concern, to ask that question. And as long as there's some laws that it's not going to be they're just going to lose their job, or it's never happened before, because we always have the redheaded Eskimo you have to deal with in life. So no disparagement to that, but it's just a unique situation that these folks will, would be subject to prosecution, and that the current laws are good enough to take care of that. If perhaps the chairman of the committee would be willing to check on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I assume you meant that the State Board of Elections staff would check on
Well,
that
whoever they're, but they have to refer it to the
and let us know.
the AG.
Yes, I mean, Ms. Lamone said earlier in response to my question that she would be consulting with the AG about other issues. So if we could ask on behalf of the committee, if I may, that you can consult with the Attorney General's office about whether there is a penalty for violation of confidentiality agreements.
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Senator Young, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Listening to all this, it sounds like we're still not going to have election results for many days. Is that correct?
Well, under this, what I'm hoping for, Senator, is that we'll have some of the mail-in voting tabulations and early voting results on election night, which will be released after the polls close. And then, of course, election day results will start coming in as well, as they close the polls and get things wrapped up. But you have to remember now that under the law, the locals don't have to finish the all of the canvassing until the second Friday after the election.
But I thought I heard you say you were trying to work out something where everybody would release them at the same time.
But that's only a small portion, not a small portion, it'd be a large portion of, because it'll be the mail-in ballots and early voting. And then election night will get election day, but they still have to go through the process of auditing the election and counting the provisional ballots or not, and then releasing the certified results.
Oh, maybe it's me, but I'm hearing two different things.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're saying they can count them, but they're going to hold them. But you just said before that they could be released that night.
Election night, right.
So then some counties will do it, announce all their votes election night. Some won't do it for a couple of days.
No, I'm hoping that all of them will have something election night, but they still have the process of going through. And for those ballots that are received, remember, they can be received until sometime after the election, and those ballots have to be canvassed as well, along with the provisional ballots. So there's still be canvassing going on after election day, because the process works its way through the schedule.
So some counties, we may have full results, except for those that come in election day. And for other counties, could be a couple of days because they don't have staff and they're not counting them.
No, I think what I envision, Senator, is that the majority of the mail-in ballots that have been received by the local boards during the time that they can be received, which is up through, I don't know, what is it, the second Friday or the Friday after the election, but the majority of them will come in earlier than that, and they will be canvassed and the results will be ready to be released election night, along with the early voting votes. The remainder of the ballots that are received after a certain, they're going to have to stop counting them at some point because they have to run election day.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to stop counting at some point, and then they'll start again the Thursday after the election with the whole process of dealing with the provisional ballots and mail-in votes, ballots that come in if they voted on election day.
So if a county gets 50,000 mail-in ballots and they only have 25,000 of them counted by election day, they'll release those, but we won't know the rest for a few days.
That's what I'm thinking, but we don't have a definitive plan yet. We just got the court order on Friday afternoon, and we're trying to figure out the best way, excuse me, to accommodate as many of the different desires of people to see how the system, how we can make the system work to accommodate everybody. And I understand that the candidates, of course, want to know as soon as possible what the vote totals are, but we still, even if we had everything counted up until election day, the voters still have a right to return their ballot as long as it's postmarked on election day.
Well, that'll always be the case. I'm
Right.
just concerned about the ones that have been cast before the election
Right.
and election day. And I thought I was kind of hearing you say you would work out a plan, and a plan might be everybody's got to hold them for 2 days. Some can do it. I mean, what's the plan if everybody's going to do it different?
Well, we don't want everybody to do it differently. We want to work out a plan so that everybody is doing it the same.
Okay, then if one county hasn't counted them and said it's going to be 2 or 3 days, and we have the same plan, then everybody else has to wait 2 to 3 days.
Senator Young, if I could, I think what I see the disconnect here. I think what Ms. Lamona is trying to say is, and your question relates to the canvassing, but ahead of election day. And
Yeah.
I think what Ms. Lamona is saying is that in an ideal world, if the Attorney General agrees the state board has the ability to do so, that she would like to see uniformity in both canvassing and in reporting across the state.
Thank you.
Yeah, I fully understand that.
Okay.
But that might mean that if some county said, I can't get it done for 3 or 4 days after the election, and we grant that and we do it uniformly, then everybody's got to wait 3 or 4 days. Uniformly means everybody does it the same way.
Correct.
So if we aren't requiring everybody to do it election night, then we aren't going to have those results the next election night. It could be several days if you grant that to some jurisdictions. That's what's concerning me, and that's what I was hearing. And I think I'm still hearing that.
But if I may, the state board does not have to accede to, if you don't have the authority, according to the Attorney General, to require that the counting be done by a certain date.
But
I'm not going to agree to a process that lets the minority veto those. You won't have uniformity. You shouldn't let the slow county dictate to the big county or the other counties.
Then I don't understand the question. We just say everybody has them in election night. Everybody has them in election night, or everybody doesn't. That's what uniformity is.
I don't disagree with that.
Well, but I was hearing that some people said they can't have them in because of staff or whatever. So if we allow that and we have uniformity, then nobody's going to be announcing them for a couple days.
Well, I'll be happy to get back to the committee when we come up with a plan and see if that answers your questions. But it's my intention to have it as uniform as possible, both the canvassing and the reporting of the results.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for election, I think the plan ought to be tell the counties to find staff and have them counted by election night, or reassign some of their staff. But we push for counting early voting, and now we might be hedging on it. Or we count it some places, but we don't announce it. My thought is it ought to be counted and announced election night. That's the plan.
Riffing off of that a little bit, Administrator Limon, when do you anticipate? I realize you just got the court order on Friday. Yesterday was a holiday. When do you anticipate having some more clarity on this question?
Oh, I'm hoping maybe tomorrow, but the staff has got a lot of moving parts to think through, and I want to give them time to be able to give it some thought.
Okay. We appreciate that.
Delegate Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm, and I'm all for unanimity too, and I want everything reported as quickly as possible, assuming it's accurate. But even today, even before this court ruling, we were not getting uniform reporting, right? I mean, we all follow the election. We all follow the election website, all of us, we're all political animals. We sit at home on election night and hit refresh over and over again. And in some cases, we're going to get the check mark. In some cases, we're going to get the check plus for days, depending on the availability of staff, depending on when things are counted, when things are reported and double checked. So I don't understand what the concern is. Obviously, you want to get everything out as quickly and accurately as possible, but sometimes things are going to take a day or two, and that's right now. So I don't understand what the problem is. That's kind of an isn't that so? Madam Administrator, I apologize, but I was just in response to some of the other questions. I just want to see where that problem is, and I just don't see it. So please go and finish the procedures that you're planning on doing. I'm sure they will be fair and accurate, and implement as appropriately as possible.
We'll try. Thank you.
Well, this is quite a robust discussion, and we still have some homework to do. I want to thank every member of the committee, and especially the AELR staff and the state board staff, for making time for us. Sounds like we're going to be chatting at least once again, if not more often, over the next 28 days. And I just ask that AELR staff remain as flexible as possible, considering all the other things we have going on, in order for us to react if we need to any further regulations.
Great. Thank you very much.
I concur in what my co-chair has said, and seeing no other requests, no other hands raised virtually or otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation, both members, our staff, and SPE staff.